startup is not about brilliant idea. A startup is about the ability to withstand uncertainty and build a business model where none exists. 90% of startups fail, not because of competition or lack of investment, but because the founder doesn't do one thing, they don't turn the idea into a system. I'll explain why startups really fail and how to get through it if you're building a system for the long term. Hi everyone, I'm Anton Vasilenko. I'm an entrepreneur, co-founder of the international cyber club network True Gamers, and several of the brands that operate in hundreds of cities around the world. I build businesses as systems from scratch to the international level. Here I talk about what I personally experienced, how I launch projects, scale them through franchising, and maintain control. No illusions, no motivation speeches, just real experience, strategy, and numbers. If there's no pain, there's no business. The first mistake is building a startup around an idea instead of around a pain point. A product without pain is just a hobby. Even if you have great design, a website, stories, and a pitch deck, people pay to solve their own problems, not to fulfill your ambition. A pain point is when people are already paying to solve a problem, but the process is inconvenient, clumsy, or untrustworthy, and the market is waiting for a more precise, clear, and systematic solution. Here's a case from our own cosmetic brand for curly hair, called Rock and Roll. Before entering market, we spent 6 months on customer development and analysis. 80% of women with curly hair didn't understand choosing the right products. They adapted European products, mixed brands, and broke recommended routines. We didn't invent the problem, we systematically addressed it, offering an alternative and effective approach using the SGM method, specifically tailored to our unique climate with comprehensive diagnostics and clear, easily accessible language. This is a scalable and crucial entry point. There will inevitably be significant problems with your startup if you don't have a truly repeatable model. You might be able to create a product just once, but if you can't consistently replicate it, that's not a sustainable business, it's merely an isolated incident. Scaling doesn't start with Instagram, it starts with a spreadsheet. How did the client come in? How much did they cost? What did they do in the first week? How much money did they spend? Will they come back? Maybe will they refer someone? If you don't know where your funnel begins, how the client interacts with your product, how you lead them to their first result, how you track your quality metrics, then you're building chaos. True Gamers cyber clubs are a real-life example. When we launched in Dubai, we already knew how many people we needed for the launch, what traffic metrics to expect, how to calculate occupancy on weekdays and weekends, how to hire an admin and evaluate their performance, and what a finished club looks like from both a brand and operational perspective. That's why we were able not just to open a location, but to launch a franchise that can be replicated, and whose success we are confident in. Another mistake startups make is that the founder doesn't step away from the product. A startup can rely on the founder for the first 3 to 6 months. But if after a year he's still the one selling, creating content, writing code, processing payments, and communicating with partners, that's not an entrepreneur, that's a skilled, highly paid craftsman. That's just an employee in a different kind of cage of his own making. If you don't establish roles and delegate, you're not building a system, you're just clinging to control because you're afraid everything will fall apart without you. Example, here's a case from the barbershop Borac. In the beginning, I was holding on to too much operations, product management, training, education of our partners. But by the time we opened our 10th location, this became a bottleneck. We introduced launch coordinators. I finally moved up to the level of strategy and project architect. From that moment, the business started to operate without me. That's when it really began to scale. Another common mistake is a lack of unit economics. All expenses must be clear. Acquisition, retention, support, team, taxes, commissions, rent. Show you example calculations through Gamers. The average visit duration is 1.5 hours. The hourly rate is 25 dirhams. The cost of coffee and service is 7 dirhams. The LTV of one active client per month is 3.5 visits. When you see the numbers, you're not afraid to scale. You're not scaling an idea, you're scaling an economic model. Next, a startup, for example, can be held back by the lack of a team or by not understanding where it's headed. The team doesn't work for a share in the company. They work for meaning. People stay in a startup when they have a trajectory, respect, and a framework of freedom and responsibility. If you can't explain who they are here, how their actions impact growth, and why you chose them, they'll leave at the first sign of overload. Here's what we do at Curl or, for example, at True Gamers. We allocate areas based on the logic of influence. Each person understands where their share of meaning lies. We document our thinking so newcomers can join without losing the sense of purpose. We hold regular strategy briefings, where we're going, why, and for what purpose. So, to sum up, here's what we get. Make sure you're solving a clear pain point, not just doing something new. Calculate unit economics from your very first client. Start building a scalable architecture right away, even if you only have 5 clients for now. Delegate by role, not by task. Develop a shared language, glossary, and documentation, so the team doesn't have to guess, but can act. Check whether the team has a clear understanding of the direction, not just yours, but a shared one. A startup is not a one-time shot. A startup is when you build something every day that can later be repeated. You might not have an office, you might not have money, you might not have a website. But if you don't have an architecture, a purpose, and a model, you don't have a startup, you just have an idea that's getting lucky for now. I'm Anton Vasilenko. I don't build products, I build businesses that anyone can enter, understand, and scale without any drama. Goodbye, everyone.